Hello, writers. So today we're going to do, at home learners, today we are going to do 2 revision lessons, and both are regarding adding details. But it's a little bit different than the specific, relevant, and sufficient details. Now we're really going to talk about adding sensory details. Those are your hear, taste, see words, and then doing a little show, not tell. So if you remember in Author A True Story, how she went, the rodent was curious, but then she, instead of saying the rodent was curious, she showed that the rodent was curious. And that is part of author's craft. And it's really delicate because, sorry, I'm trying not to say really. It's delicate. It's like adding salt to something. If you add too much, it's going to ruin your piece. And if you don't have any, it's going to be kind of bland writing. So we want to, I almost said really there, we want to stay focused on adding just the right amount. And as you go to your draft and you make these revisions, if you do me a favor and change the font so that I can see that this is where you made a deliberate choice to add some sensory details. And that is it. So my actual lesson will take about 10 minutes. Please watch the entire video. And then I get to work as a writer. I'm so excited. These pieces are really starting to come along. Before I go, really quickly, so remember how I was super excited about all those IXL problems you guys had done? Well, it turns out those were mainly math, which is good. I'm sure your math is starting to really spruce up. So I would like you to, I don't have as many of you who have mastered punctuating dialogue yet. A ton of you are practicing, which is great, but 36% of you have not even started. So that's a problem. I'd like you to make sure you master that this week at some point. And I'm going to add a capitalization IXL for next week. Okay, thank you, writers. Bye. At-home learners, you're going to start by pulling up your narrative writing digital notebook. And if you are doing a hard copy notebook, you're going to write the next 2 lessons on the next 2 blank pieces of paper. So going to the table of contents, today we're doing how do writers use sensory details and how do writers show, not tell. So you're going to go down, if you are digital, you're just going to go down to slide 8. And if you are a hard copy, you're going to write this, how do writers use sensory details in their writing? And feel free to, if you have time, to copy down some of those examples. And then you're going to pull up the Pear Deck. And I'd like you to write this page in your notebook, either your digital notebook or your hard copy notebook. I think this is very thorough, but it's really a great page to give you an indication of all the different types of sensory details. So when we're talking about sensory details, we're talking about sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. And actually, even motion can be considered a sensory detail. And so the words of sight are the colors, the shape, or appearance. So gloomy, dazzling, bright, foggy, gigantic. Those are all put a vivid picture in the reader's mind. It's not just a regular day, it's a foggy day. So those are really cool sight words to use. And then words that describe touch and they could also be abstract. So like some of you in that writing exercise last week, you were saying the creepy man. That's kind of an abstract concept. Or gritty, slimy, fluffy. things that you can touch or feelings that you have. That is the touch. And then words related to hearing are going to be things that are describing sounds, crashing, thumping, piercing. And then these also, sometimes these words actually mimic sounds. And when that happens, it's called onomatopoeia. And they're actually onomatopoeic words like pow and bang. So the word actually sounds exactly how it sounds in real life. That's an onomatopoeia. It's a really tricky word to spell. So if you are a brave speller, figure out how to spell that word. And then we've got taste and smell, which are closely related. Most taste and smell words you're going to like substitute. It tasted so good. Well, that's not very exciting. And so instead, you might say zesty, tantalizing, sweet, stinky, stale. And those words that are just a little bit more, those are going to be your taste and smell words. And then motion also is sensory. And by using active words to describe movements, you're going to evoke a stronger, vivid image. So even last week when we were practicing, someone said jolted, and I thought that's awesome, jolted. I don't hear that word that I jolted. Uh, so those are the words that are really sensory words, and I want you to copy all of this into your notebook. And then you're going to do a little bit of practice. So when you do the practice and it says answer here, I want you to put your name, put your hour, and then you're actually going to do the practice sentence. You can do one sentence, you can do two sentences, you can do three sentences. Just have a little fun with this. I just want you to get into the habit of writing a sentence with using some of those sensory details. And then lastly, you're going to go back to your revision. And I only want you to find two sentences to revise and add sensory details. Because remember, too much is too much. So only do two. Having a little fun with that. Anyway, so I want you to actually go back, revise for sensory details. And could you please highlight when you are in your draft, change the color to red or blue or whatever so that I know you've actually done the work. So find a couple places, add some sensory details, and highlight it so I know that you've done it. And that is the end of the first lesson. The second lesson is called Show, Don't Tell. And you may remember this. You may have had some of this conversation in fifth grade. I remember teaching it to fifth graders. So I won't take too much time on this, but I love the video that this teacher did. So I want to make sure that you listen to it. I think he does a really good job explaining the difference between showing and telling. And also, for my digital writers, I've already done the chart. I put the chart in for you. For those of you who are keeping a hard copy notebook, I would appreciate it if you would copy just a couple examples so you have them. You can even go back to that Helen Lester slide where she shows in her revision, remember she had the rodent was curious. Well, that's telling us the rodent is curious. But then as she revised it, she went to that part where she wrote, the rodent stuck his head in the bag. So that's an example of showing, not telling. And then, so watch the video and write down these notes, and anything else that you think is going to help you as a writer. Remember what showing, not telling is. And then I'd like you to do a little practice. So in 5 minutes, pick one telling statement and turn it into a showing statement. Again, when you do your answer, please put your name and your hour. That's a big help for me. And then lastly, I want you to go back to your draft, and I only want you to pick one place in your draft to revise. And I want to make sure that we're not overdoing it with these revision lessons. So if you look down at the bottom, like that one at the bottom where the statue felt rough, its aged facade caked with dust, ugh, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to read that. So you want to get it just right. It was heavier than it looked. Some of the orange facade crumbled in my hand as I picked it up. Facade is like the face, if you don't know that word. So that's a much better example of good writing. Fluffy writing gets really, really difficult to read. Sorry, I did a double really, really there, but it is really annoying to read fluffy writing. So you wanted to get it just right. Okay, writers, and then that is it for today. So hopefully both of those revisions are going to help your piece get a little bit more entertaining, and I'm so excited to get reading. Okay, thanks. Bye.